What is up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about some of my favorite budget smartphones that I think are pretty slept on, and some of the phones that I've had but had to sell for other phones and stuff like that. And I wanted to go ahead and just talk about some of my favorite ones. I don't really get to talk about these a lot on the channel anymore. But first up is the Xiaomi Note 8. So one of the special things about this phone is that it's super cheap, brand new, out the gate. One of the things that I really liked about this phone is that, it's usually under 200 bucks, but it's right now I think it's sitting right at 200 bucks. But one of my favorite things about this phone was that the build quality. It was a glass back and it had a really nice premium feel to it, because I think I paid like 166 for it, and I was really impressed with that. It is a plastic frame, but it definitely feels super solid. You really can't tell the difference. It would feel like a premium phone. But you do have an IPS display on here. It's a 6.3-inch display. It was actually 1080p, little water drop notch, 409 for the PPI. I really like the display on here. I thought it was super solid with colors, viewing angles, and brightness was all pretty solid on here. And this phone is capable of running Android 10 with MIUI 12. I didn't really have any issues with the Snapdragon 665 chip and the Adreno 610. I was able to game and stuff like that just fine. It was able to bounce around MIUI with ease, and we all know that's a very heavy skin, so I was really impressed with just how smooth the phone was. Now the only thing with this phone was you have micro SD support, which is great, so I don't think it's such a big deal, but it only had 32 gigs of internal storage, which was definitely a little low. I think the standard is 64 on budget phones, but yeah, 32 gigs, but they did throw in the micro SD, so it doesn't bother me that much. But you do have 3 gigs of RAM on here, and like I said, the phone was plenty enough speedy and stuff like that, so I didn't really have any issues. This phone actually has a headphone jack, of course, and no NFC on this guy, so for mobile payment you don't have that, but it does keep the infrared port, which is always really cool. I know there's a really small margin of people that use the infrared port, but it is there, and it's a very cool little feature to have. And I think one of the best things about this phone is the cameras. So you have a quad camera setup. It's a 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel depth and macro sensor. You have 4K video with a 13 megapixel selfie. I absolutely love the cameras on here. They had really good detail, really good color, depth of field. These were some pretty solid cameras, and I really wasn't expecting it when I was using the phone, so it was just awesome to see that. So this phone actually had pretty decent battery life, 4,000 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging. I definitely got through the day easily with this phone, so this is overall a really solid option, I think, still, if you can find it under 200 bucks. Next is the iPhone 7. I absolutely love this phone. I hate that I sold it for the SE 2020 because I know it sounds weird, but this phone, it was something about the body of this phone and how it felt in the hand. It's something that I really love, so I think I'm gonna buy another one because I just really liked it. Now this phone is well below 200 bucks these days now, but yeah, I just love the body and the compact size of the phone. I just think it feels super solid. I just really like this phone. So it's an all aluminum design. I think that's the main thing, because I think with the 8 it goes to a glass back and stuff like that. I really like this aluminum feel. It just feels really good. It's IP rated, IP67 rated. You have a very small screen, a 4.7-inch display, so people with compact, or people that like compact phones, will definitely like the iPhone 7 being a really good budget option. And 720p plus, 326 for the PPI. The screen was overall fine. It was bright outdoors, colors were pretty good, no issues with the screen. Of course you have I guess an outdated design on the front, but overall I think if you're a compact user, it's not anything to really complain about. Now the coolest thing with the iPhone 7 is that it actually got the iOS 14 update, so you have the widgets and the whole update on the phone, which is really awesome. So this phone being able to support the latest software is just great. You also have the Apple A10 chip on here, and the phone was pretty speedy, just bouncing in and out of applications. I wasn't able to use it with iOS 14, so I'm sure it's even faster now. But gaming on here, doing pretty much anything, social media, I did not find the phone to really be laggy even on iOS 13. So just know you do not have expandable storage, and you're stuck with the 32 gigs. So you're kind of forced to use the cloud storage on here. You do have 2 gigs of RAM. Like I said, it doesn't really matter because iOS is so well optimized. Now you do have some pretty decent stereo speakers on this phone. No headphone jack, of course. NFC with your Apple Pay, so that is on there. And the fingerprint scanner comes in really good handy these days with the mask and everything. So Touch ID is just really fast on these guys. So you do have just one camera. It's a single firing camera on the back, and then you have the selfie camera. I found the cameras to be okay. I think they age okay. You can kind of tell it's an older camera because it doesn't have the best detail, but video surprisingly was still really good. I used it for FaceTime and stuff like that. It was actually really good, but photos are fine. If you're in good lighting, you'll get a decent shot. You won't be super blown away or anything like that, but I do like the video on here. It was really solid. Battery life is not super great. It's a 1060 milliamp battery. My tests, I got around 4 hours of screen on time, which is okay. I guess if you're a light user, maybe you can squeeze more out of that. But you're gonna need be charging this phone regardless. So I like the iPhone 7. It's a good pick. Next is the Bold M1. This is still a special phone because it's the only phone for $200 with a full screen Super AMOLED display. $200. I still love this phone. I still actually have it. I'll try to make an updated video about it. It was supposed to get Android 10. That's what I've been waiting for with this phone because it really needs it. But this is still a super solid phone for anybody that wants the more immersive experience. The Bold M1 is the way to go if you're on a budget. You really just can't beat these specs for the price. So it's actually a full glass and metal design, which is pretty crazy. So it just feels super solid in the hand. I love the they call it the Raven Black look, and it looks really good. I actually really like it. And you do have the Helio P70 and Mali G72 GPU, and the phone is pretty fast. Like I said, you can play games on here. You have a beautiful AMOLED display. It's 6.4 inches, 1080p, 403 for the PPI. I love the display on here. It looks really, really good. Just really, really nice. So if you're somebody that watch a lot of content, or you want that more immersive experience, you don't want a punch hole notch or anything like that, this is a really, really nice phone. So you do have micro SD support. You actually have 128 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM on this phone, and you also have a headphone jack, and you do not have NFC though, so no NFC for mobile payments. And the fingerprint scanner is actually under the display. It's as fast as you would expect it to be. Honestly, I think it's just as fast as like the one on the V60. I think it's just as fast as that one. So it works, but that's your only option, is the downside. This does not have face unlock, which sucks. But you do have decent cameras on here. I wouldn't say great, but decent. It's a dual camera setup at 16 megapixel standard, 5 megapixel depth. Only reason I set that is because you don't have an ultra wide on here, which kind of sucks. You do have 1080p video, the pop-up camera, 13 megapixels, 1080p. That's fine. It takes good photos, I guess. If you're in good lighting, as you can see, you'll get a pretty good shot with this phone. Just don't expect to be blown away. Because the image processing is just it's okay. Colors are just okay. But this phone has pretty decent battery life too. Actually, it's got a 3,500 milliamp battery, fast charging, and this is a very rare phone to have wireless charging on it for $200. It's pretty crazy. So it does have wireless charging at 10 watts, which is absolutely nuts. So you can get around like 7 hours of screen on time, which is pretty good. So overall, the Bold M1 is just a really awesome phone. Alright, next is the Realme 6 Pro. This is going for around 270 280. I really like this phone. I was really on the fence about this phone's display having the double punch hole and how annoying that would be, but overall, once you get the phone, in the hand. It's actually not as bad as you would imagine it to be. So I was really like anti double punch hole, but you can stomach it. So if you can stomach a punch hole, you can stomach this. But this phone also has a pretty cool looking design to me. It's got a glass back, plastic frame. You actually have a 90 hertz IPS display, 6.6 inches, 1080p, 399 for the PPI. I really like the display. Everything just felt really super smooth with Realme's UI on here, and I really liked it. There's just the experience is really smooth. Playing games at 90 hertz is a really cool experience as well. You do have Android 10 out of the box, Snapdragon 720G, Adreno 618. Overall, it's a pretty speedy phone. You can do some medium to high gaming on this phone, no problem. You also have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. You have your headphone jack on here. You do have NFC, and you have the fingerprint scanner side mounted, which is again my favorite implementation of that. You do have on here pretty decent cameras. I wasn't super blown away with the cameras, but they weren't bad at all. They were pretty good. You have a 64 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, 4K video, and like I said, you have that dual camera setup which comes in handy up front. So it's a 16 megapixel standard and an 8 megapixel ultra wide. So if you're somebody that takes like selfies with like a group of people and stuff like that all the time, or with your friend, that could be a nice little addition for you. Now you also have pretty good battery life on here, a 4,300 milliamp battery. This phone does charge pretty fast. It does have fast charging at 30 watts, so it does charge up pretty fast, and battery life is pretty good. You can definitely get through a day of battery life for this phone, so I wasn't really upset with that one at all. So overall, I like this phone. I think the display is really good on here, the 90 hertz. The specs are pretty decent. Overall, it's a solid phone. Last on my list is the Galaxy S9. In the used marketplace right now, it's going for $250 to $300, and I'll have all these links down below. I really like this phone, and I don't know if Samsung is going to support it for Android 11, but it did get the Android 10 update. But this phone is still pretty specced out for, you know, a phone around the $250 to $300 price range. You still get a lot going for it. So you get a premium design on here. It's glass and metal, IP68, dust and water resistant. The display is absolutely beautiful on here. It's a Super AMOLED HDR10. It's a 5.8 inch display, which is a really sweet spot for people who have smaller hands. It's not too small, but it's not too big as well. It's actually a 1440p display, 570 for the PPI. Absolutely beautiful display. Colors, everything are vibrant. There's no notch or anything like that. The display just looks really good. So you do have the Snapdragon 845 and Adreno 630. This is a phone that can still game on high settings, so Call of Duty, Fortnite, PUBG, whatever, this can blow through it easily. You do have micro SD support and 64 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM. Also, I do wanted to mention this phone is one of the phones that get really hot. I think this phone and one of the Pixel phones I reviewed, I can't remember, but this phone does get hot, so I would like pick up a case for it. It's not super hot to where it's uncomfortable, but it's noticeably like it gets warm. So you do have really good stereo speakers on here as well, and those sound really great too. Your headphone jack is on board, NFC is on board. You have Samsung's kind of gimmicky iris scanner that they don't do anymore, but that is there, kind of works sometimes. The fingerprint scanner is physical, it's on the back, it's fine. You do have the Samsung desktop support on this phone too, which is really awesome. And even though this phone has just a single firing lens on the back, it's a 12 megapixel standard, it still took some excellent photos with depth of field, colors, dynamic range. Everything was solid on this phone. It's a really good camera phone, and you can throw the G-Cam on here as well. They have that port, and you'll have a really good phone. It's just, you know, you don't have an ultra wide or anything like that. The selfie camera is also really good, and that actually shoots in 1440p, which is a really nice addition. So battery life was kind of okay on here. It wasn't too crazy to me. It's got a 3000 milliamp battery. It's got wireless charging as well. I think battery life was like maybe 6 to 7 hours, which can get you through a day. So this is a really solid phone. So yeah, I just want to talk about these phones. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.